Rodney, it's happening.
What's up, man? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, you ever used oil of oregano
No.
for
No.
the purpose of killing germs
No.
and viruses in your mouth
I gotta
instead
tell
of just
you.
eating it?
I gotta tell you. You do a lot of things for your immune system. And you still get sick
Well, when I get sick.
when you don't do these things.
Mm.
So consistency is the key.
It's
with
consistency,
oil
but
of
like a
oregano.
lot of these things. So like oil of oregano is not something I would use all the time anyway. I use it when I'm traveling, like when I'm in a place where I know I'm going to be around a lot of germs. Now I have a 2-year-old, so maybe I should use oil of oregano all the time because she's at daycare.
Yeah.
And she's probably bringing home germs for us to try out every day.
Yeah.
So maybe I should be more consistent with my zinc and oil of oregano.
Oh. That's a good tip. Consistency.
That's like a reverse shtick. It's like a shtick, and then it got turned back on me. It's like
Self-improvement, everybody. Consistency with your immune protection homeopathic remedies. It's good.
I don't think that's homeopathic though.
Hey, I'm Keith.
And I'm Rodney, and this is the More in Common podcast. Welcome. This is a place for genuine, authentic conversation, and where we explore the fact that we actually have more in common than that which divides us.
And if you're interested, you can find everything about More in Common Podcast at www.moreincommonpod.com.
Typed up those W's.
You can go and find all things More in Common. Now, before we get into the review of last episode, we have to read one of the amazing reviews from actually one of our past guests, Jeff Tippett. Since he took the time to write it, we're going to take the time to read it. Rodney and Keith are amazing hosts. His words, not mine, I promise. Their flow is so natural, feels like guys hanging at a bar, having a great, insightful conversation. Jeff, we're excited to have that review, to potentially
man.
collaborate with you again here soon, and thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Last episode, JJ.
Yeah.
What would you take away from that?
The intensity with which JJ listens. I mean, he's a fairly intense guy is what I got from talking to him, and he doesn't really have a middle ground. He's all the way on or all the way off, and the intensity with which he listens, and then the listening methodology that he and his team came up with, it's been really impactful for me since during that conversation, but since that conversation, like checking in with myself, checking in with my wife, checking in with you, checking in with my friends, like to see how things are actually going. It really, even with my 2-year-old, like when she gets home from daycare, like how do you feel? Like how are you feeling right now? How did you feel today? It's a question that I don't think I asked enough, and it's really changing some of my relationships, so it's really good. What about you?
One of the things for me was even though I don't know I'll ever be in this situation, but if you're ever in it, suicide prevention tips that he talks about. Like, you want to talk about being prepared or caught off guard. Like, it's something that resonated and stuck with me. And then his just pure honesty and vulnerability to represent himself as he sees himself as a man, even though he had a life ingrained in a toxically masculine environment. So it was just awesome to have him.
Well, and I think that check-in process was even a part of what he used in the suicide part.
So, Rod, who do we have today?
Today, we are with Gina Choi. Gina was born in Memphis, Tennessee, but considers Los Angeles her home. She attended Pepperdine University and is currently an advertising account manager at Microsoft. Her favorite author is F. Scott Fitzgerald. He is an author that fanned the flame for her love of reading after she finished school. In 2018, she spoke at a TEDx conference on the topic of being open to new passions in life. Where she isn't sitting at a desk, she spends her time taking photos, in some new workout routine, studying / enjoying wine, and planning international travel in Excel spreadsheets. What did we get into in this conversation, Keith?
My goodness. Her childhood, as usual, how she feels she's an overachiever. We talk about her managing anxiety and having panic attacks. We talk about passion, what it means to be a Korean American to her, and just so many other ththings. I'm super excited to bring this conversation to you. And real quick, before we get into it, what strikes you about the dialogue?
So I know Gina from work, but we didn't know each other on this level. It turns out we're basically twins.
Yeah, you guys are very
overachiever. We love our cookies and stickers. Anxiety part's a little different, but very much alike. She mentioned a book called The Road Back to You: An Enneagram Journey. I read that book. Fantastic book. Highly recommend it for people who are interested in personality types. It's not like the Holy Grail or anything, but it's just really good. So that's what struck me. About you.
Funny you say what struck you is that she's like you, and what struck me is that she's like you. And, but specifically how she thinks about, we get so caught up in this idea of passion being something we need to pursue. Whereas in her mind, it's like, just have passions and do them, regardless of what you do for a living. And it just reminds me of you and how you do all of these things that our shticks represent. And you get paid for none of them. So it's just a really cool parallel to your life. So it's a big thread in the conversation, and I hope you enjoy it.
But it's not, right? Like, you can be passionate about something and get no recognition. It doesn't invalidate your passion or make it any less valuable. So I think a lot of times people are scared to fully commit to their passion, thinking that, and I'm guilty of this too. It's like, for me, it was photography, but like, it's not profitable, or I can't make a living off of this, so I'm not going to pursue my passion, or I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to cast it off to the side and focus on my career, when you can do both.
Well, good morning. Here we are with Gina Choi. Gina, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
In the lead up to this, we talked about a lot of things, but where I want to start is I asked you, what's your favorite thing to ask a young person? And you said, what'd you do for fun today? And I loved your answer, so I would love you to explain why you said that. Mm-hmm. And then also, well, I have a follow-up question, potentially, depending on like what you say. But
okay.
Yeah.
So I have a few thoughts. And one, it goes back to my childhood. I was your typical goody two-shoes sort of student. And I was always very proud of showcasing that to my parents or any other adult who would ask me, like, how's your day? How's school? I got an A. I got 100%, I got picked first in PE. And lately I've met a ton of cool kids through babysitting, through my friends' kids, things like that. And they've actually reminded me of very basic life lessons. Like, for example, I think of one where this girl named Ava, who I babysit, looked at me one day. We were eating, and she goes, "You can be whatever you want," out of nowhere. And so
the mouths of babes.
Yeah, man. I was like, whoa. It literally like almost made me cry, because I was actually going through like career thoughts and transitions and things like that. And so I asked that because I want to remind kids that they should play and they should have fun. And it also serves as a reminder for me to relate to them in that way too, instead of trying to like bring them up to my level and ask, how was school? What are you learning? What are you doing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you want to be when you grow up? I tried a lot not do that, because I was so hung up on those types of things when I was little, and so I try to ask them about playing and joy more.
I loved it because my dad and I often talk about, like, when do children lose being children? Like the innocence and the fun and all of that stuff you're talking, like, and when you said it, I started thinking, like, I typically say, what'd you learn today? And I might ask, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, yes, you should learn something every day. Like, life is huge and there's always something to learn. However, when I think about back to me, like, that's the question I got asked. And it became, and I was a goody two-shoes that, like, I didn't want to let anybody down. So I felt like this urge, this push to make sure I learned and cataloged so I could answer the question at the end of the day.
Yep.
Versus being a kid and like going and having fun. And it's not my parents' fault that I felt that way.
No.
They weren't trying to do
Right.
that, but it was like a piece of that childishness
Yeah.
died.
I think what you like that question. First of all, I can envision asking that question, and it's like asking, somebody about what they love, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
if someone's really into gardening and you ask them about their job, you're going to get a half. Oh, my job's okay, right?
Mhm.
Like my job's good. Tell me about your garden, and you're going to let them open up, right? And kids are about having fun,
Mhm.
but more importantly, and I think this just from a tip perspective, like this goes back to our first episode where one of the most resonant tips for conversation that I've had since we started this podcast was speak to the level of your audience. And you just said, rather than bring them up to where I am, learning, academic, trying to figure out how to make you better, like who are you today? We can get to that once you've learned to trust me. And now we're having a conversation about what matters to you before we have a conversation about what matters to me. And I think there's just so much practice. Like when we talk about conversation tips, like that's an awesome way to practice. Practice on a kid, ask them what they did to have fun today. And like you can just open your mind up to listening and ideas. I think it's an awesome perspective.
Yeah.
And I will ask that question moving forward. Like I just love it.
So that goes into my next question. I get to work near you in the office. We don't work together.
Right.
We talk every once in a while, and I see you as a super, like, I don't know if you're type A, but like a very high achiever. And you said something else in the lead up that when you feel like you can feel yourself slowing down, like when you're not achieving the thing that you want to be achieving or at the rate that you want to be achieving it. And you said slowing down, so I was wondering what you meant by slowing down, and then how you catch yourself, because you said you're pretty good at catching yourself, and I'm wondering how you.
Yeah, so I would say when I'm in my most healthy, I am an overachiever. So you're very accurate in that, almost to a fault.
I said high achiever.
Oh, sorry.
It's interesting what we do to ourselves, isn't it?
I said it, yeah. So when I am in my healthy state, I tend to overextend myself, which sounds unhealthy, but that's where I feel the most productive. That's where I feel the most, fulfillment. That's in like personal life and in my professional and once in my academic life. Where I slow down is when I feel like what I'm doing and the effort that I'm putting towards something is not meaningful to me. Like it's not adding to the core of who I am or my values. So maybe, I'm behaving in a certain way with certain people that I feel like is taking away from my life. It's not adding to me. It's not adding to them. And I'm very in tune with that. Like I need relationships to be wholesome and fulfilling for both of us. I can feel myself slowly starting to peel off of that and kind of go into myself and reflect. And then that in turn slows me down, right? So then I get into my journals and my writing and my reading and stuff. And that's just one example, but on a grander scale, like I think our careers are something that happens a lot where we feel like we're not doing work at whatever job we are at or whatever company we're at. And it gives you pause because you're like, what am I doing every day? 9 to 5, 40 hours a week. I'm spending more time with my coworkers than my family. What is the goal here? Right. So that's what I meant by like slowing down is I tend to take a pause when I feel myself saying no to projects, not raising my hand.
So that for you, it's a red flag, or it's a flag to say like, well, okay, something else is going on.
Yeah. Like I'm disengaging mentally. And I'm distancing myself maybe because I'm afraid to keep pursuing this or because it's just not interesting anymore. And then I have to reset.
So Rodney said high achiever. You said overachiever, which often has a negative connotation, and maybe a little self-deprecating from considering yourself a high achiever. Like, what do you define an overachiever as? Like,
Great
when
question.
you say I'm an overachiever, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa. It's definitely fulfilling whatever role you're expected to fulfill. So if you're a student, that is to be an excellent student. But then above that, it's like your extracurriculars, it's your volunteer work, all of that stuff, all packaged up nicely in a way that's maybe different from your core peer set or who's around you. So for work, it might be you're on one other project than the next person, or.
Is this is this something you think on your own, or is this something that you were taught to think?
This was very much on my own because my parents were always very concerned. Especially my mom. She would say, Gina, you are just relax, right? And even my dad, I remember he would say things like, you're 21, back in college, or don't you go to the club? I'm like, no. I don't think I've ever told you this, Keith, but my senior year in high school, my dad had been concerned for a long time. And so he sat me down and showed me Risky Business and a number of other movies of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I'd already seen, but he's just like, do something, be irresponsible for a day. He's like, be a teenager. It's really bothering me. Yeah.
But I think so this is really interesting, right? You, based on the way you talked about slowing yourself down, you feel comfortable in a quote unquote overachievement state, right? Which I would then say you're in an achievement state. They're not comparing to anybody else. You're just achieving the way you're most comfortable. Mm-hmm. And yet you try to bring yourself out of that because of, is it social pressures, the way you were raised? I mean, you lived in 11 different places between 7 and 18. What's the root of the negative perception of quote unquote overachievement?
Well, and is it negative? When you say it, do you say it negatively?
No.
Do you feel negative about it?
I don't feel negative about it. The only negative I would say is the burnout part of it. Where I have struggled with anxiety and panic attacks, in high school and in my early career. And I know that when I'm not getting sleep, when I'm not feeling healthy, when I'm not going to the gym, when I'm not eating right, those things happen. I get panic attacks and anxiety attacks. So I guess the overachieving in and of itself isn't so bad or negative in my mind. It's the effect of it, which is what causes me to slow down as I learn more about myself and about what I need and what kind of space I need to feel healthy, not just in my achievements, but in my mental health too.
How did you get to that place? You talk about journaling and the other things that you do today, but how did you get to that space, managing through panic attacks and anxiety?
Yeah. It was really bad after college. When I first started working, it was crippling. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't do the things that I was so used to doing growing up, which is to be the person who knows all the answers, who gets all the tests, all that sort of thing. So I got through it by admitting that I needed help and seeking out that help and telling people, people who loved and trusted me and knew who I was, that I needed help. And that was the hardest thing, honestly. And
so real quick, when you say it was crippling,
yeah,
this is panic attacks. And,
oh yeah.
So what does that look like? What is a panic attack?
Yeah. So, a panic attack for me looks like not being able to breathe, sweating, mind racing, depending on where I was. If I was at work, everything would spin, because I would be sitting upright. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time it happened when I was waking up in the morning. There's a lot of biological reasons for that, but I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. I knew I had to get up and go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, all of that. Couldn't do it. It was just I was strapped to the mattress and I couldn't get up.
Physically couldn't get up.
Physically felt like I was.
And emotionally.
Yeah. And
what kind of biological reasons? You kind of just went by that.
Yeah, there's some kind of chemical in your brain in the morning that spikes for everyone. Can't remember what that is right now. And that just tends to exacerbate symptoms in the morning. Some people feel it at night, but it is very around the clock. something I learned through therapy.
Interesting.
So what made you this is fascinating, that self-awareness, like for the audience purposes, like you're young, you're in your 20s, right? Like the ability to have that awareness at a young age to say, hey, I need help. You know, a lot of people struggle with it for a long time before they get to that point. So where does that come from, right? Is it your parents? Like, you know, I'm very curious.
Yeah. Truth be told, I think I should have gotten help in high school.
Did you have them then, or did it peak post college?
I had them in high school, and I don't really remember how I managed. I think I just suppressed and I don't know. I think I filled my time with positive things like friends, social activities, things like that. And I was lucky to not have slid further from that point, but it definitely got worse after college. And where it all came to a head was I couldn't go to work. I was commuting like an hour and a half, and I couldn't drive because of my panic attacks. Like I physically could not safely drive to work because, you know, LA traffic and things. And I was pulling over every few miles, like breathing exercise. Like I couldn't drive. So I had to tell my my manager at the time that I couldn't make it into the office, and essentially they told me to take a leave of absence, which I felt was very drastic. Like I wasn't asking for that. And then the other alternative.
So did you feel it was like punitive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was not the best conversation, I think.
Did that cause a panic attack?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then I felt like I had to hide them. You know, I felt like I couldn't.
Oh, like because saying them was then like you were going to be punished at work because you valued your job.
Right. And that gave me a panic attack because I was like, I can't lose my job. I can't, you know, take a step back in my career. I can't do this. I can't afford to do this right now.
Were they actually trying to be supportive, like, or no?
No, not at all. They gave me like a 1-800 number, a form for leave of absence if I wanted it. And then my manager was like, I don't know why you're telling me this right now, and gave me HR's number. It was a bad situation.
How do you feel about talking about mental health now? I mean, obviously you seem pretty comfortable with it at the moment. Oh, yeah.
I think it's so important to talk about because there are still people who don't feel comfortable talking about it. I know, recently.
And we talk about it a lot.
Yeah. Recently we talk about it a lot more. It's celebrities people look up to are talking about it. Like it's a very, I would say, evolved conversation than what it was even like 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so I feel very comfortable and I feel very passionate about talking about it. So if anyone even brings up a thought about mental health, I always share my story, or I try to share my story. And I find that people who know me are very surprised. And that just encourages me to share more. It's like there's not one type of person that experiences anxiety or panic. You know, it can be the person who's like happy and giddy on the in the front, front facing to the world, but they're struggling. And
when you said you had them in high school, but you're not sure how you got through, like maybe you suppressed them. So do you remember at all what you said to yourself? Were you like, oh, I can get through this, or it's not a big deal, or it's like everybody has this, or what did you?
I didn't know what it was and I just thought it was stress and like college fear or anxiety, and like I just thought I was just stressed about school. And I was like, oh, it's junior year. Everyone's stressed. Gina, like, calm down. You know, relax. Everyone's going through this. Your classes aren't that hard. You know, you don't have that much going on. So there's a lot of, like, pushing it down. And I didn't know what, like, mental health was not something we talked about. And I didn't know even what that meant.
As in your family?
I think, like, my family, my friends, my school, like, we never really talked about it. I wasn't exposed to that topic.
I get that.
Yeah. So I didn't know that I had panic attacks or anxiety till I had them after, like in college, or after college, I should say.
Did you have them in college as well?
No, I was pretty steady Eddie in college. And again, I can't explain why that happens. I can't explain why some people struggle with it for years, and some people it just kind of like comes and goes. But for me, I can remember very specific chapters in my life where it happened, and other chapters I felt nothing. Like I don't struggle with it right now. But that could change. And And so
Brain guy. I'm gonna start calling you brain guy since you're the psych guy. Do you know anything about panic attacks from an academic standpoint?
Not particularly. Yeah. I mean, no different. Like, I don't know the hormonal makeup of them versus depression.
Right. Well, you've lost the title, brain guy. So.
Yeah, that's totally fine. So, what's interesting, and I think as a parent, and given one of our guests that we've interviewed, who's never had exposure to mental health, and his daughter ended up, with anxiety, or not anxiety, anorexia at 10, and bipolar by 13, 14, and how he managed it, which I think is incredibly awesome. And we talked to him.
He and his wife.
The reason I bring that up is because, like, your parents were like, be more of a kid. Like, they wanted to see you relax. What was and you moved around a lot as a kid. So, like, what was home like? Why did you move so much? How did that play a role, or did it? Like, what? I'm just very curious, because I think it's important, even as parents, that sometimes no matter what you do, there's nothing you can do to change that, other than to give it a safe space to be. So I'm curious to understand how you grew up.
Yeah. So should I just give you my timeline?
Sure.
Okay. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and I lived there till I was 7. And my family had a family business. We were doing very well. Things happened on the business side, and so we ultimately lost that business. I was 7. I had no idea what was going on. So I was born into a fairly stable, like fairly upper middle class, I guess you could say, home in Memphis, Tennessee, as an Asian American, which has its separate set of struggles, but mostly happy. And my brother came along while I was out there too. So he and I are 5 years apart. And when I was 7, our family's world flips upside down with the loss of this business. And all of a sudden, like, we were struggling, and had to find a way to make ends meet. And my dad is such a go-getter in that way. It just so happened that we knew people kind of like spread out all over the country. And so for the next 10 years, we were moving wherever the jobs took us. And that led us from Tennessee to Pasadena, California. And then we went to Glendale, California. And then we moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina on a military base. And that was like right after 9/11 happened. So there was a lot of reserve members, being deployed and things. And then we moved to Dallas, Texas, where I had some family. So we stayed there for a little bit. And then we went to Louisville, Texas. And then we moved back to California, which all my family's here now. So growing up, I moved every summer. So every fall, I was new state or on a new coast. I never had like 2 school years back to back where I knew who my, peers and teachers were. So in that sense, like, I think outside looking in, people say, "Oh, that must have been so hard." How did you manage that? Like, how's your relationship with your parents? And I feel very fortunate that I was very close with my parents, and I never once felt any sort of like resentment or any kind of like familial chaos from it. Like, we were very strong as a family unit, the 4 of us. Where it did become a little bit more messy, I guess, in my mind is me at school, and like me in relationship to other kids my age. And that's where I struggled. Was day one, you're always trying to fit in, like, wherever you are. So you have like a couple hundred days to find your friends, make your friends, keep your friends, and then lose your friends, right? And by like the 3rd or 4th move, I was almost expecting to move again. And so when I would meet kids, I would say like, "Yeah, I'm Gina. I'm from, Texas," or wherever else I was from. And then almost kind of tee up that I would leave at the end of the summer.
I'm sorry, I know there's more timeline probably. When you reflect on it or journal, do you think that had anything to do with the panic in high school? Because you said you thought it was college, like, causing the panic attack, and that's another move, another set of friends. But then in college, you were there for, I don't know, 4 years where you didn't move, and you got to have the same set.
Yeah.
Do you think that did it play in at all?
So I think in high school, I did like an ultimatum to my parents, and I said, I'm not moving freshman year. Like, I think when I was 16, I was like, I'm not moving. If we have to move, I will move in with my friend and I will stay. And they're first gen immigrants, and so college was this big, like, scary thing. I was the first person in my family to go to college in America, and so they thought, like, oh, if we move Gina during high school, she's not going to go to college. So we stayed for college. I was at the same, or we stayed for high school.
Oh, so all of high school. Yeah.
Same high school for 4 years. And I think I built up all this pressure of, like, what high school was supposed to look like, you know, from a social perspective, but also an academic. And then it was my first chance to be somewhere for more than a year. So there was all this pressure to fit in, to be liked, to do well in school, to be a good kid, so like volunteer, all that stuff. And junior year, when all your college apps are due, I think it just like all came crashing down. And that's what I just think happened. But, you know, maybe high school Gina would have said, like, I was just stressed with class or something like that. But just the expectation of what I had in mind for who I was going to be in high school and post high school, because I felt like the moving was over. It's kind of like this breath, like, I'm done. And it was still hard, you know, it was still hard to be in the same school, and it was still hard to have the same friends. And I thought it would be so much easier.
Mm-hmm. He did not appreciate it.
So interesting parallel that your anxiety kicked in high school when you were around
back on the couch
more Korean students. And, you know, Korea, like a lot of East Asian cultures, are very high performing.
Yes.
Did that contribute to it? Like, am I going to live up to this standard? Or
I don't know if that was it as much as it was I felt like I was being blended into this blob of people, that people expected me to act a certain way or study a certain way or talk a certain way or dress a certain way. And I didn't feel like I felt as a part of that. And I didn't really want to be a part of that either. So I didn't find myself assimilating to the mass of Korean students at my high school. I did hang out with them, but I was always like maybe one step removed.
In the way that you were always the Asian student, the Chinese. Now, did you get the same in-group judgment just from a different lens?
Sure.
Yes.
Come on now.
Yeah.
In-groups are the worst. In-groups are the hardest.
It is so hard. Yes. And it was like, Gina's this because she's from Texas, or Gina's whitewashed.
She's a what? Yeah.
She's a Twinkie. Do you know what a Twinkie is?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was an Oreo.
Yellow on the outside, white on the outside.
And I'm an Oreo. Yeah. Because I sound white.
Yeah, and I was in cheerleading. Like, I was editor of my yearbook. I was class president, and those are very like extroverted things that typically a lot of Korean American students didn't step up to do. Like, Korean American students were first chair in orchestra,
which is interesting because there's only like so many first chairs.
You know what I mean?
Well, no, but to the larger point, no group is a monolith. Like, Koreans do these things, but Koreans do all kinds of things.
Exactly.
And like, to bucketize you for, it's weird, right? Like, this is something that eternally frustrates me about my black folks. Like, we're not one. And like, you'll tell me that I'm not black enough, but then you'll turn around and tell Keith, the white dude, that like, all black people this. And it's like, wait, what? What's happening right now?
You know, it's such a funny thing, especially from a white, like my white lens, is that no matter what I've done, I've never not been white enough. Or like
it's not a thing.
Be like, oh, look how white he is or she is, and it's kind of a joke because they're a bad dancer or they're something, but it's not. It's just not a thing.
It's becoming a thing. Weren't we talking about this earlier? It's kind of becoming a thing.
We're talking about the white racial identity that's becoming more of a thing. But if you look at it, it's not. It's a joke. It's a high class type of situation. Like, it's a place that, oh, okay, like, cool, right? Like, if that's what you think I am, like, that's cool. Like, I'm cool with, you know, being high class or whatever.
I can't dance. It doesn't affect my day.
Like, I can't dance. Yeah, exactly. And it fascinates me, like, how does that impact in both of you, like, mentally, like, daily? when you're around people of your own culture or people that look like you or, you know, people that look like me, like what is there a flip flop and is it positive, negative? Like, how does that all play out? Because it's so interesting that you can jump from place to place to place and be the outsider and then go to a place where you potentially could be the insider and now you're still the outsider.
It is confusing. I think in the last few years, and especially going to a school like Pepperdine, which was, when I went, it was very heavily Caucasian, and
Probably still is.
it's gotten a little bit better, I think. And yeah, and then that was another flip, right? So I went from like high school where there were tons of Asians, and then again back to like college where there were no Asians again. Like there were 10 of us. And in college, I just ran the other way. I was like, I am not joining Korean Club. Like I'm not joining Asian Pacific Heritage Club or whatever it is. And I just like, I was like, this is it. I'm going to make, I am who I am. Like, and it's not going to be tied to a race. And I think it was almost like an act of healing for me to separate myself from that, because I was so inundated by it up through high school. I was like, I just want to be me, and I just want to study and like do things I love. But you can't separate yourself, right? Like people perceive you for who you are, or what they perceive you to be, and so yeah, I don't think I reconcile it in college even. But
You said you kind of suppressed like the panic attacks. Do you think it could have been some emotional triggers that maybe you just suppressed in general? Or no?
No, I don't know. Like, did I suppress my feelings about my race?
And just the confusion of it, or like getting to be around, air quote, my people and not fitting in. Like, fuck, like, what am I going to...
You know what's weird about that is like junior year was probably when I was so socially focused too. So I was like, I don't know. I don't want to say campaigning, but like my friends were pushing me to be homecoming queen, and I got it, and I still didn't feel like I fit in, which is so insane.
This
right?
is a eerily strange parallel. There was no reason for me to be a part of the homecoming court, and my friends pushed me to be in homecoming, and I didn't win king, but I was like on the court.
Oh yeah,
and
I was
like
on court or whatever.
And like
it was junior year.
I was like, I don't understand this. It felt even weirder. It's a really strange parallel.
Yeah.
Or,
and then all
or
the
similarity.
Koreans were like, "Oh, she's the only Korean on court, backing me." And I was like, I don't even talk to a lot of you, but because you recognize my name, maybe you voted for me. I don't know. So it was like a weird thing. So from the outside in, it probably looked like I was having a fantastic year. I was class president. I was on court.
So you were a known quantity, and you were liked to a degree that maybe you're not accepting right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you were president and also got voted onto the court, like for whatever the popularity contest is, that is high school.
It was all these checks of like cheerleader, like all of these things.
You mentioned it earlier that in general, Koreans don't look for that. So were you the Korean in your school looking for that? And like, are you downplaying it to Rodney's question as a demographic vote? Like, is that the way you perceive it?
I think I was, if you got all my classmates and polled them and said like, who are the top 5 Koreans in your class who were socially out there, like I would be on that.
You think you'd be one?
Yeah, probably for girls. Yeah.
High school politics broken down right here.
Well,
More in common.
I find it more fascinating that you felt this. Your parents were first generation immigrants. So if anybody has a claim to Korean culture, like, did your parents raise you in the culture? Like, what was that like at home for you?
Yeah.
And did that cause dissonance at school based on the way other people said you should be?
So I should note one very important fact about my childhood was my grandma lived with us from age 1 to 16. So she was moving with us. She spoke Korean fluently, of course. And
do you?
Yeah, I spoke Korean fluently. I still speak Korean fluently. So in that way, I would say culture was definitely a part of home life because of my grandma, because she was there all the time cooking meals, teaching me how to read and write Korean, speaking Korean to me, watching Korean TV, music, all that stuff. My dad, he, back in Korea, was studying English. Like, America was always his goal. So as soon as he married my mom and there was an opportunity to move, he moved. So, as, you know, he wanted to raise his kids as American kids. So there was this kind of like balance at home of my dad would try to ask me more like American questions. So he'd talk to me about the stock market or American history at the dinner table. Like, those were the types of things we talked about. And then on the side, my grandma, who was caring for us while my parents worked many, many hours during the day, would instill like the Korean values and things like that. And we were a very Christian home, so we were very involved in church. And Korean churches is another subject I could spend hours on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is another group, like, entirely. That's another example of, like, it's a religion, but it's also a culture. Because when you move to a new country and you don't know anyone, who do you go to? And every city has, even Memphis has a Korean church, right? We went to, like, Korean Baptist Church
I live in Gardena, and we got like 30.
Oh yeah, it's a thing. Like, you move, you find your Korean church, and they'll help you. They'll hook it up. So we went to the largest Korean church in LA, which is about 8,000 people, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Mega.
It's a mega church up like 20 miles away from here.
Like, how many people in a single service?
I think like 3.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I
like
can't even.
Stadium.
That's a state. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that was another like thing I was.
Well, that's a whole nother cultural identity thing. 'Cause,
Right.
like,
and I was very involved in that life too, on top of all of the things in high school. And so
learning.
You said a couple of times that, like, before, when you get into something and you start realizing it's not aligning to your core to who you are or your values, and then you just said Korean values, and that's a whole nother thing. Like, what are your core? What is core to who you are, and what are those values?
As Gina.
As Gina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whose house?
My values. They are to be vulnerable, to be honest with myself, and to be kind to others. And that manifests in different ways, like to be kind to others and vulnerable piece. Family is another huge one. Like, I grew up only knowing family because at the time we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Twitter. So when I moved, like, I didn't take my friends with me. Like, that was it. I started over. But family, like my brother and my mom and my dad were the ones that, and my grandma were the ones who came with me. And so that is very, very core to who I am. And
No, I'm just curious. That's
yeah,
good.
That's a good question.
You said
I don't have any. I have other questions. Yeah.
Grandma was watching you while your parents worked a lot of.
Long
The way
hours.
you said it made me think that you felt like they worked too much.
Yeah.
Is that how you said it,
I
or
didn't feel it. I knew it. They did work too much. Oh yeah. I don't think I saw my dad very much, and that's not a sad thing. I knew he was doing what he had to do. Like, I was never really like resentful towards it, but he worked his butt off. Like, he had 3 jobs at a time, and I knew it from a young age. I grew up really fast. Like, I had to accept that was our lives because we had to survive, and my mom also worked that many jobs too, and sometimes together, sometimes they were together, working jobs at the same time. Sometimes, one was taking a night shift, someone was somewhere else. Like, their jobs were constantly changing. It was just I couldn't keep up with what they were doing, but I knew that they were both working way too much.
So you couldn't even name all the
Stop.
jobs your dad had.
No. Yeah, I couldn't.
So all of this leads to a thought I had coming into the conversation, but now I'm even more curious about it. So you did a TEDx.
Yeah.
And
A really good TEDx.
Oh,
a really good TEDx. And it was about
We'll add
passion.
it to the show notes.
Yeah. It was about passion.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you say in it is we have an unrealistic expectation for passion today.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? And where does that come from for you?
That line, I meant to say that I think people, society, when you hear the word passion, a lot of times that's synonymous with your career. I'm passionate about cars, so I'm going to be a NASCAR driver. Like it's pushed to almost the extreme of like you have to achieve the most upper echelon of success.
You love butterflies, so you should go study them forever and ever.
A new breed of butterflies, and make them the most successful.
That should be the thing you do or become.
Like, you should be on Nat Geo for that. You know, then that's your passion.
Yeah.
But it's not, right? Like you can be passionate about something and get no recognition. That doesn't invalidate your passion or make it any less valuable. So I think a lot of times people are scared to fully commit to their passion, thinking that, and I'm guilty of this too. It's like, for me, it was photography, but like, it's not profitable, or I can't make a living off of this. So I'm not going to pursue my passion, or I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to cast it off to the side and focus on my career, when you can do both. So that's what I meant by that.
How did you, go ahead, Keith.
No, you go ahead. I think you were going to ask the same question. In a different way, so I'll let your way rule the day.
How did you get to that place? Like, you said you struggle with it, or you struggle or struggled?
Still struggle.
Okay.
Yeah. How did I get so I should say my passion is photography. Like one of my passions is photography, and I had that very real struggle. Am I going to major in this and pursue it as a career? And I didn't. And for a while, and I still struggle with it now, is like I felt like I was letting go of something that was core to who I am, and it was this like big hole in my life of like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that was taking up more time than me trying to work towards what my goals actually were. Like I was almost like in this weird space of transition, like why am I not pursuing photography and not really doing anything else about it too?
So I envision this like, on one hand, you're squarely a millennial, and on the other hand, you've got this experience with your parents being first generation fob, fresh off the boat. Is that how do you feel about that term?
I don't like it because I want to say my parents are fob. I don't know. Fob.
Isn't that show called that?
Fresh off the boat?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very commonly used.
I know it's commonly used, but I've never actually said it to anybody, so I'm wondering, like, is that...
I think it's a little bit... Like, I would never go up to someone and be like, you're a fob.
You're a fob. It's tend to
right?
be, like, in a conversation, it's typically derogative, isn't it?
Yeah, but then it's also... people use it self-deprecating, in a self-deprecating way, so they'll be like, oh, I'm such a fob.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, if their English breaks mid-sentence, they'll be like, oh, fob moment, Well,
I've never heard that.
Can you talk slower? I'm a fob,
So on the other hand, so millennial on one hand, parents, first-generation parents on the other hand, that are, like, I have to presume a lot of that work, that drive for them is that, like, we're here, we're going to make it. My children are going to make it. So I see this struggle, like, millennial, passion. Not like... And I don't think it's as misguided as many people think, but like passion. And then I just got to work.
Yeah,
like, I got to, like, is that real?
Yes. Yes. That is 100. I'm on the chair again. Yes. And that is exactly what I went through or not even just senior year, but like as soon as I realized I needed to make money, I was balancing those two, and
you said it. You said I can't lose this job. When you were talking about the panic attacks, you said I can't lose this job. I
cannot lose this job. I was living with my parents at the time. Like I could have lost the job and been okay. Like I could have had a house and food, but survival is not enough for me. And so when people ask me, "Would you ever be an entrepreneur?" I'm like, "No, that is so scary because that's unstable. It's scary, and." I crave stability, and I am very comfortable with that. I've come to accept that is part of who I am, and I'm not...
Was that a difficult thing to come to?
No. I would... Maybe a little bit. With the creative stuff, I had to let go. It was
But you could be a photographer for a big company or for...
Yeah.
But I guess that's not your creativity necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't want to be doing like editorial. I was like looking more into photojournalism and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which is, but definitely I have this drive in me to, if I'm going to work, I'm going to work, and it's going to work for me and my finances. And then I can put my passions and hobbies on the side.
I have a question about passion in this whole idea. Like, I love your perspective on it, and one of those opportunities for me to really challenge the way I think about passion myself. But how do you feel about companies, i.e. the one that we all work for, telling us we need to be passionate about what we do?
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh. Hot take coming up.
Yo. I come from a place where I believe work can be a means to an end. So I think that just comes from my parents surviving. And so I think like that to me is also in some way a passion, is to make sure I am building a life for me and my future family that is able to support and provide. And so I can't really separate my personal interests, like, hobbies and things, from the fact that my passion is to be successful at work. And so when I do believe in a company like the one we work for, I don't really take it that badly when they say to be passionate about my work. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll find something I'm good at. I'll find something that I feel is contributing, and I will do my best at it. And to me, that is what I see as career passion. That's very different from maybe what some other people might say.
Keith, how do you take it?
Well, I think because I think that's great. I think that's a great take, and I would agree. Like, find a job that you can live passionately in, right? And just give it your all to succeed, regardless of what it is. Where I disconnect from the direction is when I'm told, be passionate about a thing that we do, right? Like, hey, we'll say it. We all know we work for Microsoft. We've talked about it before. Like, I can't be passionate about Office or Windows or cloud services. Like, I get there are people that work here that do, and I think it's amazing that they do, right? Like,
there's nothing wrong with being passionate about it.
There's nothing wrong with it, but it's like, why do I need to be? Like, to your point, Gina, like, I'm passionate about doing good work. Like, I am passionate about making sure that I show up my best often.
Yeah.
I'm
to your point, like, it can be
day,
a means to an end,
right?
And that end is feeding my family, and I'm passionate about them eating.
Right,
so therefore,
like, telling me you need to be passionate about cloud services. You're
pick a
basically
metric.
telling me, like, I need to live and breathe this in order to be successful.
I think it's the wrong word. Like, okay, this is my problem with it. I think it's the wrong word. Like, you can't, well, I guess you can tell somebody to be passionate about a thing, but, like, I don't think passion works like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have it or you don't.
Right.
I don't think.
Right.
That's why it's personal.
Right.
You can't expect everyone
But this just gets into, like, this opens a bag of shit for me with corporate America. Like, we tell people to be passionate, or we tell people we're family. Like, no, we're not fucking family. Like, you're not my family. Like, no.
Without the paycheck, we're not here.
Yeah, like, my family
we're
doesn't.
not in the trenches. We're not bleeding every day.
No,
we're not sweating every
lives.
day. Like,
we're not having real talk about the things. Like, we're just here surviving, sometimes barely, in order just to get a thing done, and we're out. Like,
yeah.
And tomorrow you can tell me to go home and, like, never come back again. My family would never do that to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so how can I call you family when you can dispose of me like a bag of trash? Right?
Yeah.
I struggle with it bothers me. It burns. How do you feel about it, Gina?
That does, yeah. I have this, it irks me when people overuse the word family. Like
McDonald's.
do they say
I don't
that?
know. I felt. I'm sure they say something like, "Come on in, we're family."
You know, like being on sports teams in school or something. They're like, we're family. You know, it's like, no, we're not.
And I actually think sports can feel more like a family because of the shared struggle. Like it's a different level of struggle than for me personally, than work.
Maybe
No,
it's
I would
different.
agree. Like sports, especially the higher levels you get, can absolutely.
I played such a high level.
But
I
our
was
middle
so
school
high
volleyball
level.
team was not a family.
My middle school volleyball. Well, I didn't play volleyball, but my middle school kickball team, we were like ride or die. You know,
Do you
but
still
it's
talk?
shared.
blood in,
struggle
blood out.
here.
Yeah. We're
We
like, man,
all
remember
have
that
the same
time?
shared struggle, corporate America.
Yeah.
No.
Things get weird when it's tied to money. Money does weird things, right? So
What do you mean by that? Because
Get into that.
yeah, like we are all paid to be at work, right? And so
Right.
when you tie things like passion and family and love and things that are core to being human and like personal to you, that can be messy because you're there to receive a paycheck unless, I don't know, you founded the company and that is your true passion in life and that's what you're doing and you employ all these people and you consider them to be your family. But most of the time in corporate America, you apply for a job, you interview and you get it, and then they call you family. I think that's just very confusing, especially when there's money involved.
I wonder if it's meant to conflate some of those things so that it's like, yeah, I'll say I love it because I love this paycheck. Like I do genuinely love this paycheck. So you know what? I do love that thing that we do. That widget number 7 is great, even though it's dog shit, but it's great.
No, I mean we talk about the golden prison, not the golden handcuffs.
Oh yeah,
right? I
we've
think
changed
that's
it from golden handcuffs to golden prison.
Why?
I think that's a part of it, right? It's I want to like they want us to love them, so we give them our all, even though tomorrow they can get rid of us.
So let's
Right?
take Google. Let's take Google because let's not talk about where we work.
Yeah.
All right, where we work's perfect. Let's talk about Google. So like had lunch or breakfast there, I don't know, 12 months ago, with a friend, and their breakfast cafe, like you get to order an omelet and like whatever you want, and they also have a buffet. Next to the water, they have fish oil and vitamin D and vitamin C and like multivitamins and collagen and protein powder and spirulina. Anything that you could want for that's there. And like, so it's like the trappings. It's like all the things that you would want that you now don't no longer have to pay. So it's money saved. Now also you never really need to leave campus.
Yeah.
And so if an opportunity comes up, on top of that, you get stock options, you get a great paycheck, you get health, they have personal trainers and a gym, they have multiple espresso guys, like baristas there on campus. Like, what do you want? You want the regular? Because you're my guy. All of these things. And I think we changed it to Golden Prison because like we're having this dialogue, this conversation about like, not only do we have this passion, but we see a road where we can make this our livelihood. And even thinking about putting a foot on that road, and I'm pretty risk averse. Keith is as well. What? As well.
Yeah. Serve water.
Wells do serve water. And even putting a foot on that road is terrifying because it's like, oh wait, I'm in this wonderful cell that has all I need.
Yeah.
Why leave it? Why would I leave? Like, that looks pretty good over there. And we're pretty intelligent people. It's easy to see or know that the grass is often not greener, right? Like, so it just feels like is it a jilted cage or?
No, but I think it also ties back to Gina's point of the over-indexing on passion.
Yeah.
Right. It's an interesting thing, but at the same time, like then it's a matter of, and it is who you are. If you can do it, right? But don't feel obligated to do it, right?
Well, and also not necessarily. I don't feel obligated to do it. I would like to do it. What I see as a thing to overcome is like, well, do I want to turn the key and open the cell? Like, Is that something that I
Yeah.
really, really want to explore?
Do you
Kinda
have the
To
key?
your point, or do I don't even know if I have the key.
Yeah. That's a
that's
great
a
question.
deep question.
Yeah. We'll find out. We're looking
Well,
for
and
it.
it's like, because if I open it, all those things that are really important, like the means to the end, the feeding of the family, the having a
Stability.
paycheck,
Yeah.
having a health insurance, all that stuff is there. So if I had the key, maybe I have it and I hid it.
Mhm.
But
Far away.
obviously, wait, yes, I have the key. I hid it from myself.
Ooh.
It's good. So Gina,
Yeah.
like we're gonna cut that
Holy
conversation. Like, it's such a good conversation. So
I just looked
as-
at that and it was like 10:35 or 10:39.
I will say real quick, my dad and my parents would say that this is like Harvard. Like, I've made it, you know?
Oh,
And if I ever left, I think my dad would be devastated.
I talk
Yeah.
about this with a lot of my friends I went to school with. That one of my buddies is at Facebook now. He was at Apple. His parent, like when he left Motorola. They're not even around anymore. But he left there, and they're like, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
They're first generation from India, and then like he left Apple.
Right.
And they're like, and didn't have a job, and they're like, "What the f is wrong with you?" And he's like,
Gina just had a panic.
like, what? Why would you do that? Like, Microsoft?
Yes.
Like for them, to your Harvard, it's the major league. It's NFL.
It's like
the Olympics.
Right. My dad, it's like giving up your gold medal to go take bronze from.
Not even bronze. It's like to go sweep up a.
Yeah.
They're like, I've been there. Why would you go do?
Why would you go to the D League?
I think it ultimately comes down to
How would you go to the D League? How would you go to the D League on purpose?
if you try to make money on your passion, you'll water down your passion. But if
Yeah.
you make money on your passion, then good for you. Right?
Yeah.
Like awesome.
We will worship you
Yeah.
for figuring that out.
And I
And
think
people do.
Yeah.
and they do, and I think we will. I just, we're in this space right now where it goes back to what Phil said about investing in your pursuit based on there's so much. Goodness gracious, we could go on for days. So we're running out of time. I've got to get running, and we always have to ask. Leave our audience with one thing you would like to leave our audience with.
I'm surprised you didn't have this prepared.
I do. It's just in 4 pages. Okay. I would like to leave with everyone has their story and their path. And we are forgetful people. We are forgetful beings. So record it, write it, photograph it, share it, because that's how you grow and that's how you develop and that's how you share with others. And if you're not recording your thoughts and like what you're going through and your intentions, it's so easy to get whiplashed by life and then change what you think you are, and then pause and look back and go, oh, that's not who I am. That's not what I wanted to be doing, but I somehow got on this path